Welcome back to today's episode of Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Sentner from Borough of Bellevue PD in Pennsylvania. He has 30 years experience in law enforcement. Welcome to the show, Chief Sentner. Thank you so much for being here today.
Glad to be here, Paige. Thank you for inviting me.
No, I'm really happy you're here. And I know that it's kind of getting later in the day, so I appreciate you spending some time with me. I was going through your bio and I wanted to highlight something. So you have taught emotional health and stress management for the police academy for several years. I was hoping you could maybe give us some insight into some of those things that you train younger officers in terms of maybe what some of those stressors are that they should anticipate walking into this career, and what are some of those resources that can help them to manage?
Sure. The emotional health section of the structured academy for Pennsylvania it was a few days of instruction. It covered everything from basic needs and talking about psychology on the base level, and have filtered from there into the officers, how to survive the career, basically. And I did that for a few years back in the 2000s. I'm sure it's changed. I haven't taught it in a few years, but I'm sure the structure's changed. But the base root of it was that it was important for them to recognize the need for taking care of themselves. All the training we receive about helping others in the mental health arena, our calls we go on, but we forget about ourselves. So it was asked of me to teach it, so I actually learned it. So that was my first step into the arena of the mental health side of it. And by teaching it, it opens your eyes. And every class I taught, I built on one thing or another, and threw examples and some videos, and we talked about them in class with the cadets, and they would get pretty engaged, especially following a video that was of something critical. And and we would talk about it not from the point of what that person the person was feeling, but what about the officers that handled that call, and how do you take care of yourself after this? So it spiraled along. So I really enjoyed that, and actually it gave me a good foundation for putting the chief title on and taking care of my own department here.
You said that you had to learn a lot of these things. Was this not taught to you when you were at the academy?
Boy, that was a long time ago.
I'm like, let's rewind 30 years.
I can vaguely remember talking about it back in the academy. Couple college courses in psychology, the basics, but it was one of them things. The academy gave the instructors the teaching elements, what the topics were, the bullet points, but it was up to us to plug in what we needed to provide to them. So it gave me a chance to, all right, I'm going to learn this and teach it the best I can. And I think I did a pretty good job. They usually were pretty engaged with me. Every once in a while, I'd have to wake a student up, but all in all, they liked what I was saying.
Yeah, I think that everyone who's listening can agree. Wellness has changed a lot, even in the last, decade. I think the conversation is much different now than it maybe was 30 years ago. And I think it'll continue to develop, now and, for the next decade to 30 years. And so I think it's really amazing to see, the efforts that have been made in the direction of creating more awareness and education around mental health, and, what are those resources? And now we're seeing these, younger men and women entering in the career, and it's not something that's foreign. It's been a part of the conversation since day one in a proactive way. And I think that that's really cool that, academies are carving out the time, and instructors like yourselves are taking the time to to say, hey, like, I'm going to learn this. I'm going to open up my mind to learning something new and to growing, as a leader and developing myself so that I can then develop others as well. So I appreciate you sharing that. And,
Sure.
my hope is that every academy across the country will start to see the need for, expanding those sections, even though I know they're jam packed and it's hard to find, new time for things, but to really prioritize wellness as a part of that training so that, we can be proactive and the younger men and women can enter into this career. And there's no question mark as to what some of those resources are and how to identify some of those early warning signs as well.
Yeah, we actually have a hire in the academy right now, and I'd be interested to see the difference between when I was teaching it and what he actually learned, because I'm pretty sure they've expounded on what the curriculum was.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it'll continue to grow and develop, which is great. And anyone who's listening to this is probably going to roll their eyes because I talk about this all the time, but maybe it's just a really good reinforcement. But I think that there's three steps to forward growth and momentum and change, and I think the first is awareness, the second one is education, and then the third one is action. And so I saw this quote recently that said, "Education without action is just a meeting." And I thought that that was kind of cool because, when we're thinking about trainings and, putting this information out there, I would argue that there's no one out there that just wants to put it out there just to put it out there, right? No one like wants to just put fluff out into the universe. I think when we are putting forth these trainings, the idea is that it's going to encourage action, right? The idea is that now that they're equipped with the awareness and education, they're also going to be more likely to take advantage of those resources that are being presented to them. And hopefully the agencies are equipped with those resources that they can provide to them, and so I think that we have to remember that action piece. It's great for people to know a bunch of stuff, but how can we make sure that they're taking advantage of it?
I know our state organization, the PA chiefs, along with the training commission, have put a lot of effort into making sure that the annual training that is required, the 16 hours, that there's been a block always every year for the last few years related to officer wellness in one form or another. But you're getting a half a day worth. So based on what you just said about, is there any teeth to it? Um, Probably not. I'd like to see what you were saying, make sure it's something that they want to grab and hold on to.
I like that you said that. Make sure that there's teeth to it.
Yeah.
Make sure that we're putting out substance here, right? And that people are gravitating and grabbing a hold of it. Yeah, I like that a lot. I think that's the goal, right? It's to encourage action, and I think that we can look at it in two ways. I think that as individuals, it's our responsibility to take action within ourselves. We can't wait for other people to take action for us, and that's one of the biggest things that I've had to learn over time. I really thought that everyone else and everything else would make me happy. And I think a lot of people do that. They look very externally and they're like, well, if, my partner did this, then I'd be happy. Or if, the leadership team did that, then I'd be happy and successful. It took me a long time to understand that I am the only one who can do that. Hopefully I have a partner and I have a team that is supportive of me and, that are setting me up for success. But at the end of the day, no one can do that for me. I have to take action in my own life to be happier and healthier. And I think that we have to first start with ourselves. But then hopefully you have, like, you said, hopefully you have organizations who are also prioritizing those things. And so there are resources available when that person decides to take action for themselves, they have somewhere to go.
Yep. I agree with you 100% there. It comes down to, if you love the job and you love doing the job, and if you don't take care of yourself, first and foremost, then that effort you're going to put forth in the job will start to decline. You
Mhm.
know, if your mood changes or if your health changes, your mental health changes, you'll see the progression and it'll start to slide.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that you kind of put a why behind it. I think that everyone's going to be motivated by different whys, in their life or career, but it's almost a reverse engineering that has to happen. It's almost like counterintuitive. I think that maybe society did this, or maybe we did this to ourselves, where we convinced ourselves that if we put ourselves last and everyone else first, that we would be successful. And I think now we're starting to understand that it's the reverse that's true, and not in a selfish way, but to your point, if I want to show up for you the best I can on this podcast, I have to make sure that I can show up with, a clear level head. I have to make sure that I'm prepared. I have to make sure that I take care of me and I don't show up stressed and distracted and unprepared. Right. And so, in order for me to do what I want to do and to show up as the best version for, the people that I'm working with, I have to first take care of me. And I think that a lot of people, and I did this too. Like a lot of people, did the reverse for a long time. And I think we're starting to understand that we have to kind of reverse engineer that a little bit.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the oxygen mask, right?
I can say one thing, the being chief as long as I have and being in the profession as long as I have, I've noticed that the younger officers have a different philosophy than a lot of the older officers that I worked with, which is to the good. They seem to be more focused on what we were just talking about, the taking care of themselves, using their paid time off to benefit themselves, to decompress and what have you. So that's kind of promising, uh, that that trend is going that way. It's not an abuse; it's a self-help type thing, and it's not anything I did. I just something I observed.
Yeah. Well, I think that as long as it doesn't turn into an abuse, then it's positive, right? As long as like we still have people who are willing to show up and do a really good job and give 100%, because I think you can do both,
Yep.
and I never think that anything's perfectly balanced. I don't know if I believe in balance, 50-50. I think there's always going to be things that are a little uneven, but I think that you can take care of yourself and you can work really hard and show up and be effective at what you do. One doesn't negate the other. And sometimes I see shifting in either direction, where sometimes it's like maybe there's a little less motivation towards the work, and sometimes there's less motivation towards, the self perseverance or preservation. So, yeah, I think that is, as long as we're still encouraging strong work ethic, then I'm all for it. Like take your time off, spend time with your family, do all the things. Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about leadership. What is your leadership philosophy? What makes a good leader and how do you become effective?
I started as chief. I was young. I was 35 years old, so I was kind of a baby chief, if you want to put it that way. When I went to my first chief conference, the I was I was there with people that could be my father, maybe someone of my grandfather. So I come in with a different mindset, so to speak. I had the young energy still in me, still wanting to change. So I looked at the department differently back then. It was, all right, what do we do? How do we solve crime? Let's put this together. Let's build a bigger department.
Mm.
Uh, Soon realized that, I still had to find money for all this stuff I wanted to do. Um, so I did, I settled into it, the balance of day to day. And I relied on some of the chiefs that I had known. I sought them out. I sought advice from them. Sorry. Um, and I used the different things I was getting from the different chiefs to mold what I wanted. Uh, and I started to hire younger officers, and kind of being a small department, I kind of knew everything about them. I tried to spend a little outside the office time with them. A couple of them I went fishing with, and you know, get invited to the parties and different things. We had department parties. Uh, you know, you get to know who their kids are. So I kind of always kept that kind of element to it. I come in the morning and I sit down with the officers for probably the better part of an hour. And, if something happened, then they'll brief me on it. But oh no, I just want to talk to them. It's not about having uh, a roll call. It's about
Mm.
whatever. We'll talk about what we saw in the news, who won the Penn's game last night, or a couple of them like the hunts will have hunt stories, or, what are you doing? And the shift changes in the afternoon, and I make an effort to come out and talk to them. My night shift, I kind of miss them a little bit, but I still try to reach out and um, just they know I'm approachable. They come to me usually with something they want to purchase, so it's always monetary. But they I feel pretty confident that if they had a personal problem, that they could shut the door to my office and know that it wouldn't leave there, and that they'd be taken care of.
Mm. There's a couple things I want to kind of circle back to. One, you called me young. You said 35 was young, so I really appreciated that.
Uh,
You're like,
to me,
you're
to
like, I
me,
was a
down.
baby chief. You're like, I was 35. I was like, thank you for that. That made me feel really good. So,
Well, you are young. Enjoy
thank
it.
you. I think that relationships are king always. It took me a really long time to learn that. I'm an only child. I had to learn how to grow up really quickly. I was always kind of, learning to survive on my own. And I think I held people at a distance, maybe for, self-protection. And I always had a lot of social anxiety. It was really hard for me to build relationships with people. And the older I've become, I really see the value in building relationships. I think that's what it's all about.
Mhm.
Like regardless of what setting you're in, if it's a personal or a professional setting, relationships are king. And it sounds to me that's what you're doing. You're building genuine relationships with your people. That helps to build trust. That helps so that if they do need something, they can come to you because they know you. Beneath all the brass and the titles and all the stuff, it's like they know who you are as a person and they know your heart. And I think that's incredibly important. And sometimes it's incredibly intimidating to let people see you for who you are. And I think sometimes the higher you go in your career, you almost feel like you can't let people see that side of you. But I think that actually it's one of the biggest strengths that a leader can have is the ability to be humble and have humility and to be human.
Yeah, I've always, I don't, if I see that they have something they want to say, I encourage them to, you know, it, just be open, say what you got to say. Um, and being in a small department, it's kind of unique. It's kind of almost like a gift. If we were a bigger department, I'd have a captain, I'd have, you know, lieutenants under that. And, I'm not saying that that's changes the game. A chief is a chief. He should be knowing what's happening in their department, but it usually is a funnel up to them, whereas I can see it directly and address it directly. So that it kind of puts me in that unique position. I said to be able to, help have that helping hand to them.
Yeah. I mean, I can see what you're saying. I think that, the larger the organization is, the more maybe, I don't want to say barriers, but, more the steps it takes to get to the chief. But I still think that everyone, regardless of your title, has the ability to be human and real and genuine, and I think that somewhere along the line, we convinced ourselves that if we got too close to people, or like too buddy buddy, that people then won't respect us or view us as the leader. But I have actually found the opposite to be true. I have found that the more I've tried to like be at the top and like, barking orders and that's it. I have had less success, in my company and the things that we do. The more that I've been able to connect and show interest and still make decisions, and it's still clear. Like everyone knows you're the chief. There's no question. You're still going to make the decisions at the end of the day. You're still the leader of the organization at the end of the day. But personally, I've had more success, being able to connect with people and show interest in their lives. And I think there's more job satisfaction that way.
Yeah, well, what you just said about barking, I could probably count the number of times that I actually yelled or went went crazy. uh, and I think that's good because when that situation comes along that you have to do that, uh, it really is an attention getter.
Yeah.
Like what you said, if it's somebody that just barks orders every day and it constantly is just you know pointing the finger or micromanaging, um, that gets old pretty quick.
Yeah, for sure. And we all know that morale and culture is important, and it's important to try to create an environment where people want to show up, and
Right.
how do you do that? And one of the things, we talked about is, obviously retention is a challenge right now, hiring is a challenge right now, but you talked about finding strength in your team, trying to identify, what their strengths are and building around those, and this emphasis on training and development. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. uh, this is something I have done from day one. Uh, I've been able to build upon it more. It's almost like a brick wall for me. But I I knew the officers that I had worked with when I became chief, so I knew what they liked to do, what they, you know, focused on. Uh, we're small departments, so obviously we can't branch out, and be professionals at everything. We're kind of the jack of all trades, but there's still those little elements that the officers like to do, uh, and are good at. So I've always looked at that, even if it was something minor. I kind of wanted to give them that task and watch them make it their own. I kind of, I put it in front of them and say, ask me for help, ask me what you need, and let them run. my my biggest success is probably the technology in the department. I'm kind of a geek chief. They'll admit that, and they'll say it. I am. Um, we've got a large infrastructure, camera network, computers for everything we use. If it's technology related, we're probably looking at it or we have it. So I kind of let my officers that have the computer skills run with that side of it. Uh, the officers that were into the hoorah stuff, the high, the the kicking doors type policing. We were invited to join an SRT team, so I have three officers, two and then one trying out. So if it's not going to break my budget, and I can see they're energetic about it and they're put forth an effort, uh, I kind of step out of their way. It's and I've seen it come back to me, 100% return on my investment on that. Um, they they not only excel in what they're doing, they bring stuff back to work, training. They they want to do more, they want to train more. Uh, so I keep the energy high, and just keep feeding them, asking them what they need, getting the tools they need, and I just sit back and watch.
Yeah. I think that's a one, when you show that you trust someone with something, I do think that they want to prove to you that you made the right decision, right? It's like they want to do a good job. And so it builds trust in both directions. But um, to me, it sounds like you've really mastered the skill of delegation, of being able to say, hey, I'm going to give you guys all of these things. I'm going to let you run with it. And I'm going to step back and I'm going to trust you to do it. And that is really hard. That is a really hard skill for people to learn. I think that, we all kind of want to control things and it's hard for us to trust other people. When you were able to do that, when you said it came back to you 100-fold, what are some of those things that maybe like surprised you? Was there anything where maybe you thought at one time that maybe only you as the chief could do it, and then you let someone do it and they did it better?
The tech side of it,
Yeah.
a good example is an officer I've worked with for almost 30 years. He's been here with me just a few years less than me. Um, our camera system is massive, and we have the license plate readers and what have you. And uh, he grabbed the ball and he was started to run with it, and uh, I kind of was happy to see that because that was one less thing I had to worry about. And he he's made it his own, and that's what I like. I um I don't have an ego that if you do something different than I would have done it, if it's done properly, then great. It's just do what you like to do, and if as long as it does, like I said, as long as it stays within the confines of the money wise, but the I'm all for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think just because you do it a certain way doesn't mean it's the best way. And so anyone who I hear that says that, like, well, you didn't do it the way that I did it, to me, it's like, are we looking at it and asking ourselves, did they do it better than I did it? Because that is also a very possible thing that could happen. And I would guess, I mean, it sounds to me like you want people to be better than you. And that's how I want my team to be better than me. I want to like build everybody up because one day we're not going to be here anymore. One day,
Right.
like we're going to move on. And we hope that we can pass the torch on to people who are empowered and capable and free thinkers and people who are asking the why and the how and the what and, trying to make things the best they possibly can be, not just because that's the way that it's always been done, but really challenging how things are done and asking, can it be done better? And I think it's really inspiring to be a part of a group that does things different ways and has different perspectives, and you can learn how to do things differently, and I think sometimes we have to get out of our own way because yes, there is a way that you and I do things, and maybe they have been effective, but what if there is a way to do it even better? Wouldn't we want to discover that? Wouldn't we want to learn that? And sometimes, most of the time, it takes us giving up control and allowing other people to take the reins to show us how to do things differently.
Yeah, it's I agree with exactly what you said. If their way of doing things, or if they learn something new, uh, they're actually, yeah, they're getting smarter than I am. They're the ones going to the training that we're sending them to and paying for, and uh, it's their next 20 years to run with. Yeah, and they say to leave a place when you're at your peak. And that's what I hope to do in the next few years. But my goal is to make sure that everybody has a piece of the pie, so to speak, that they can mold what I've created for them here and run with it.
Yeah, I like it. I wanted to kind of segue a little bit into like the wellness space because honestly, I think that everything that we've talked about so far is directly related to wellness. I don't know if you see it that way, but building an environment where there's trust, having human conversations, where people feel like they can go to you if something's wrong, where your people well enough to see the signs if something's wrong, to, give them ownership into different tasks and, trusting them enough to roll with some of these, things that maybe they wouldn't have had the opportunity to do before. And then you said training, sending people to training and really trying to develop them so that when you do leave, they're able and ready to take over. What do you think is, maybe, I don't want to say the definition of wellness, but what is your philosophy on wellness? And what are some of those things that you're trying to implement outside of the things that we've already talked about?
Well, there's been a number of topics come up over the years regarding wellness. Different articles come across the different Chiefs magazine. There's always an article about wellness in there.
Mhm.
But to be honest, the mental health side of it has been uh, something that has grown over the years for me. Understanding that there's it, the PTSD obviously is a big topic, but it doesn't have to be PTSD. It could be anything related. A major life shift for somebody, a depression, whatever. Uh, and I'm thankful that it's getting the attention it needs to. For the officers' sake, the stuff we just talked about, all the being able to hand things to officers and let them run with things, um, that can only be done to a certain degree if their mind's in the right place to do it. I have a number of officers that are hit the gym pretty heavy. Um, we just obtained an area in the building here, and the borough was kind enough to build a pretty nice gym for us and the fire department, and actually all the employees can use it. But the officers, are really enjoying it and took ownership of it. Um, and I know some of the other ones they're into their hobbies uh, pretty good. I haven't had a an issue that I had to deal with in a long time. So I give credit to them for taking care of themselves.
Yeah, love it. For that younger generation or, the generation that is coming up behind you, what words of wisdom would you share with them that maybe you wish you would have known when you were younger or something that you want to pass on to them that could help them out along the way?
I would say your goal is to get to the end of the road, to reach that pension that you've put all your blood, sweat, and tears into. Uh, but there is a time, and I don't, every officer, chief, lieutenant, whatever rank, there's a time that there's a wall that you're going to have to climb over in your career where you're going to question whether you made the right choice, if it's for you or not. Um, Once you get past a certain point, you're kind of almost stuck, but you're stuck in a career that you may not be happy with. So my biggest thing, and I wish I would have known it better, is see that wall coming at you. Uh, be ready to step over it than rather climb over it. It's you know recognize that you are starting to have thoughts of, man, this this career, it wasn't what I was expecting. In a smaller department, the room for promotion and different things is not as uh, available as it is in the larger agency. So there's stress comes into play, but there's always a point where you're going to second guess if dealing with all the things we deal with on a daily basis, well, was really worth it. Some people step over the wall and some people crash into it. Um, so my biggest thing is, use the tools that are provided to you. The stigma's gone. the the help's available. Stick to your hobbies, stick to your friends, be busy, uh, have that time off work, decompress, and it'll benefit you well down the road.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming on here with me today. I really appreciate your time.
Sure. Thank you for having me.
Of course.